The columnist himself is Joseph Alsop, who unfortunately people do need to be informed about him because he's almost forgotten, except by people over 70 years old. But 50, 60, 70 years ago, Joe Alsop was a huge figure in American journalism and politics.
So it's really like the man in his times. He was this influential columnist who played a huge role in some of the key events of the 50s and 60s. The play sort of charts both the impact that he had on that era and the tragic impact that the era had on him.
Since when did you give two shits about the so-called opinions, i.e. the knee-jerk juvenile fancies of a bunch of long-haired teenage radicals? I certainly don't. They don't know politics. They don't know history. They don't know anything. We don't write for them.
Who do we write for?
The influential.
You think those kids aren't influential?
I think it's certainly about a man who had a kind of power that certainly columnists and reporters don't have today. And yet was also the beginning of a time when a kind of political polarization began to happen.
It's a 6-character play full of intense relationships, and Joe's own story is so vivid. It's an amazing character study. And yet, the play takes you between the mid-50s and the late 60s. Those were years where everything changed in America. And telling Joe's story sort of tells the country's story.
No, I have not been hanging around college campuses, Stuart. I've been rather busy in some other places. Vietnam, for example.
What did you see in Vietnam?
I saw brave kids risking their lives. I saw the endlessly resourceful military of a great and benevolent power in a twilight struggle for freedom against an inhuman enemy.
Save that crap for the column. What did you really see?
The implication that I would present a different picture to my brother in private than I would to my readers is deeply offensive to me.
Did you get out on the field?
Of course I was in the field. I live in the field. What are you implying, Stuart?
What happens? How did someone who was so influential and almost a household name end up becoming so obscure? And you look into that story and you find out one of the big parts of the answer is Vietnam. It's a guy who fell terribly out of step with the times.
I think it tells you a lot about how the roots of today's political, cultural, social issues and ills had their roots way, way back then. It's a historical play, but as with the very best historical plays, it's much, much more about people than history. The reflections on history emanate from the crisis of human beings.